Yep.
Okay.
It says it's streaming. I use my phone. I'm hoping to find us on Facebook. We couldn't last time, but hopefully it will pop up somewhere. Jerry, you're really good at this stuff.
That's how we all became the Brady Bunch.
I know.
Digital
you like
natives.
that? It says meeting is now streaming. So, yay. There we are. Okay, there is a delay, so I have to make sure not to watch this one and focus on this one. So hi, everybody. We are live with a fantastic group of people in the paddling world. I really like these Tuesday night discussions, and it's been fun. I didn't connect with a couple of geographic areas, but we really have a great variety of people here from different places in the United States. Sorry to our friends from all different countries, but I think sometimes you got to narrow it down, and I'm really excited to talk about SUP racing in the US because there's people here who have done a lot of great stuff, are planning to do great stuff, have some great ideas. So we will get sharing here. My name is Kristen Thomas. I've had the pleasure for SUPConnect on Thursdays of doing individual interviews during COVID. Starting April 1st, every Thursday. So, but there were often times where I wanted to do more topical things and involve more people. So I just started doing this a few weeks ago, just because I think this is a great time for content, a great time to have discussions. Anytime's a good time, of course. But we're going to do some introductions to start with. Our topic this evening, let's see if I can, are we screen sharing? Not yet. I hate when I lose the cursor. I have to work on that one.
We're rocking and rolling.
Can you see? I've got this big screen in my way that I can't get rid of. This looks like the wrong one. Okay, I'm gonna go back out of it. Oh, I just didn't change the title. There we go. There we go. Thanks for your patience. So organizing SUP racing, lots of different topics, but we're really going to focus on leagues because there are some great leagues already in existence, some ideas for future leagues, and some different things going on. I think we should talk about real briefly. KT outside is sort of my business. I don't know what it is. Outside the box, trying to think a little differently. But I serve a lot of roles like a lot of the people here. I wear different hats. I do race myself. And my passion is really there, but I love everything about stand-up paddling. I'm serving as the interim president of the SUP Industry Association that I used to be the director of, and all kinds of fun things like that. So we're gonna start with Harrison and Doug and jump right in and let them introduce themselves. I know, again, you guys wear a lot of hats, mention the things, but again, remember what our focus is kind of about racing. So focus a little bit more on that, but please feel free to say, if you're a racer, if you own a store, if you're a sales rep, or anything else that you do in the paddling world, or in your regular day job.
Harrison, you want to go first?
No, you go first. You led this thing.
So my name's Doug Voitko. I kind of coordinate the Midwest Paddle League. We had something in the Midwest being, USA, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, and we had something called the Midwest SUP Championship Racing Series, and that went really well from like 2012 to 17. Then that kind of fell by the wayside in 18, and myself got a few other folks involved, and we started the Midwest Paddle League to kind of pick up where that left off in 2019 and been running that since. So I've been paddling since about 14. And we've ended up here. So I used to do like one race a year. Now I do like 10 plus races a year. Harrison?
Yeah, so Doug and I met through work. We don't work at the same place, but his employer is a client of mine, and we started doing some paddling together. I had done some racing prior to that, back when I lived in Michigan, and then moved to Illinois, and then back to Michigan. And when Doug started, getting the momentum for Midwest Paddle League together, and I went to the first Midwest Paddle League event that Doug and another guy that helps Bernie, had, kind of gotten involved with, and I really wanted to be a part of it. And, they had it all well in hand, but like most things, I come in like a bull in a china shop, and I kind of edged my way in. And what I do with the league is a lot of the writing and press and PR and relationship stuff in print and media. And the way that ends up looking is I do a lot of writing in Paddle Monster and Facebook and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you two. And I have to say, you guys have done a great job with what you just mentioned, because I wasn't aware of the Midwest League before it became the Midwest Paddle League. And Doug, you are just an amazing ambassador. You travel around and go to a lot of the big races. And so I know you from Hano Hano and San Diego. And
Yeah, it's amazing who you run into.
So that connecting is working well, and your media and all of that. So congratulations, you guys, on
Awesome.
keeping it growing and going. We're also, we're not going to, again, no judgment this year. It's a crazy year, but you actually had races. You're one of the only two leagues that I know of in this conversation that really had most or all of their races. So that's impressive, but also just is what it is.
Yeah, we had probably less than half, but we've had our first race in July of this year, and everyone was on kind of pins and needles. It was like, do we not? There was a lot of emotion, back and forth, but we ended up trying it, and we had 40 folks show up for it, which was down percentage-wise from where we were in years previous, but it was still 40. And over the course of the summer, we ended up having 7 races and about 350 racer experiences amongst those 7 different races.
Wow. Great.
Yep.
We've had none in California, but I won't be too jealous. Jerry, the Waterman League, which formerly was the Kentucky Waterman Series, right?
Yeah, so it's the Waterman Series. Yep. It's all good. But yeah, it used to be called the Kentucky Waterman Series. And so, yeah, do you want me to explain a little bit about it, Kristen?
Yeah, just a little bit, and which states are involved, and yeah.
Roger. So, for me, like, I'm like only a millennial in this conversation, possibly. And it was an economic thing. So for me, like, Kentucky is a really poor state. I was, coming out of college, and so the current model of paddle sports racing is based on traveling. So it's expensive. That's a barrier to entry. No, I'm not calling anyone old, but so I was like, you know what? Like, I do like a lot of stuff with community development, outdoor recreation, and environmental protection. So I was like, you know what? This could be a tool to help, grow paddle sports racing, get people interested in, water conservation and stuff like that. So I started the Kentucky Waterman Series as a tool to help, community development stuff. And it grew. And, I just was traveling around the state, pulling up like, hey, let's do an event. And it was a tool to kind of, like, we call in my field creative placemaking. So you bringing stakeholders together, community people, tourism, arts folk, food, to create an event. And it worked really well. And so then I was like, you know what? Our region, we have like a rural Appalachian region, so we expanded after I think like 3 years, and this was supposed to be the big freaking year, was like Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. And because we had a really big show out at the a race in Cleveland, Blazing Paddles and stuff, and Cincinnati Paddle Fest. And then COVID, so then I built this brand new website, thewatermanseries.com, had a bunch of partnerships and everything, and then COVID hit. So we actually, like I said, I do like a lot of community outreach work and stuff. And so my first like concern was like, I shut it down, because we, again, I'm a realist. We have really poor health outcomes in our state. So like, this is a respiratory virus. So I was like, okay, first of all, shut it down, no events. And then once things started to, become safer, and I worked with my friend who is a paddler and a trail runner who's an infectious disease expert. She helped me design like a plan, like a mitigation plan. And we got it approved by the state of Kentucky in Ohio. And so then we ran events, a few of them. We had some really good social distancing protocols, drive-in, check-in, no awards, no shirts. We ran a bare bones year, and it was really great because, like, as y'all probably know, like there's a lot of pomp and circumstance when it comes to paddle sports racing. So being able to just focus on the racing, focus on the good vibes, no shirts, no podiums, no trophies, and just get out there in a year where everyone's mental health is, like, affected and stuff, and be able to move and be together, it was dope. So yeah, that's the Waterman series. Oh yeah, and it's cross disciplinary. So SUP, surf, ski, outrigger. If you got it, pull up, Costco boat, we're gonna get you in there.
And I know that's true of a lot of you, that you involve other watercraft in a lot of ways. It is a very inclusive, but I know this is SUPCentric, and I think sometimes, you do have to separate watercraft in certain areas, but that doesn't mean your events have to be. So.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah.
I was gonna say really fast, Kristen. I come from a SUP background too, so that's how I got into it. Was racing was through SUP, and my first ever race event was a Southern Stoke race.
Very fun. Yeah, I don't know the order of things, so it's really interesting to hear how these things have grown. So Kim, the Southern Stoke series, were you one of the early series, it sounds like? Oh, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
There you go.
I just did. Yeah, so the Southern Stoke series actually started as the SUP Splash series in 2012, 13. Am I still on mute?
No.
Okay.
But I can't, he has a special sign.
The person that was organizing the SUP Splash series decided that it was too much for him, and the races that were in the series, we all kind of went, we like this. Let's get together and create, our own series. And it generally was Southeastern, we had Florida in there, Georgia, Tennessee. And so we all kind of banded together, and, it was mainly the racers that were really stoked about it. And we, came up with a different point system, low scoring. And we decided that we wanted to make it, because of the low point scoring system, we had to make the series pretty much 12 races or under. And it worked out really well in the beginning, just because, Southern Stoke started in 2014 from the SUP Splash. But in the beginning, it worked out really well because we had more races that wanted to be in the series than we could handle. We did not want to dilute the series or pillage, have some people, go to other races and not make it to, we wanted everybody to get to all of the races. And it's hence being kind of centric to the Southeast as well. We had races like Jerry had been in the series for a while, and Kentucky proved to be a little bit too far north for a lot of the people that were coming from the South or from Florida. And so, it was kind of a tough one to kind of, keep all together. But, the group of paddlers in this series is just phenomenal. I mean, some of us go back to the early days, like KT, you and I met I think 2012 or 2013. It was, what was that? Battle of the Paddle. I think that's what it was, Battle of the Paddle out there. But yeah, so it, it started from back then. And then I know that so many series within the United States have come to either myself or any of the other board members and asked, how did you do it? And we like what you're doing, can you, and we're always, I've spent hours with other people, starting up a series. So I'm glad that it's come this way. It wasn't, it's a group effort and totally grassroots.
Love it. And we'll talk more about how a lot of you have connected already, which is fantastic. And hopefully we can keep that going. John, oh wait, do we have John on? Yeah, there you are. Tell us about, this is a newer league, or maybe it's transferred, or maybe you've pulled it all together. I know Florida has a lot of racing.
Yeah. Am I not muted?
Yeah, right. I can hear you now.
My name's John. I'm founder of Flying Fish Board Company, and also, with the help of Steve Miller and Jamie Welch, who also works with us, we created the Florida Paddle League. It is a new league, but yes, Florida has had the Fastest in Florida, which was something Danny, I believe, was one of the original starters of that, along with the Roundsvilles, Zach and his dad, Mark. And, we saw the potential in that league for sure. And then I believe it sort of, I mean, Danny can talk about this, but it sort of seemed to kind of bounce around between everyone. It was hard. It's a big responsibility for sure. And so I think that league maybe went dormant for a year, but we said, hey, we've got to get something going. And fortunately enough for us, owning a board brand, we have a large customer base and a large following. So we were pretty confident that we could help some of these races with their attendance, because ultimately we just want to see racing grow in Florida, which it is by far probably one of the strongest states in the United States for sure, as far as racing.
Cool. Thanks, John. That's awesome. And thanks for all the work you're putting in, getting it going. So those are kind of the main leagues, but then we have Mark and Jace, kind of different perspectives on the Northeast. And I'm going to mention some things about SoCal, where we have had some really strong leagues that are gone now and didn't have anybody pick them up or keep them going. So Mark is, I know, as just the best sales rep ever, and I see him at all the trade shows and everything, as well as I know you do surf camps and stuff. But why don't you tell us a little bit about, and can you mention, because I couldn't remember the name of that one. I just remember there was money on it. Like people were winning a lot of money in the Northeast.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I started as a, am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. So I've been a sales rep for about 40 years now in ski, snowboard, and the surf and lifestyle industry. I was actually Dakine, Hawaii's very first sales rep in the country, and similar to that, in I think it was 2006, I gave Dave and Meg a call from Kealoha, and I said, "What's up with this stand-up paddle thing?" And I was probably a 30-year veteran of surfing at that point, and it was this rage coming across the country. And I got involved, and she asked me, how do you do this? How do you set up the reps? How does this work anyway? Well, in good faith, they gave me 5 accounts, and I think we had sold 50 paddles in 2006. Well, it started morphing and growing until maybe like 2014, 15. I had about 100 accounts, and I was putting in about 5,000 paddles into the marketplace a year. And that was pretty substantial. It became one of my top 3 manufacturers. But it wouldn't have happened without making everything congeal. And it was involving the retailers, manufacturers. We did it through SUP Surf. We did it through race. And as this whole thing evolved, like Jerry said, we involved prone paddlers, OC1, stand-up racers. We had multi-divisions and so forth. And so it really took a lot of synergy and teamwork to put it together. Back in the day, we did have a series that lasted about 4 or 5 years called the Atlantic Paddle Board Series, and they were putting up about $3,500 per race. Back in 2012, that was pretty good. And equal dollars, men's and women's, and they were mostly 4 miles for the elites, and it was a quick, hour 15-minute workout. So you're going to the dog track. You'd put in $50 and you could win 500 or a couple thousand. It was kind of cool. But what I've found over the evolution in stand-up paddling over the last decade and a half is it takes teamwork to put it together. And we're not fortunate to have any series anymore. But what's important was that we continued to grow the sport for sustainability, longevity. And so now as a rep, we asked strong manufacturers that worked with the retailers of those specific stores that put on the events to step up. And we would do demos, and we'd do debut next year's models. And it really became like a little festival, like the Paddle of the Battle did, but in a Northeast way.
Mhm.
So the long and the short of it is it took teamwork. It took coordinating so that you didn't compete for that same competitor of the retailers working together vertically, so that you had the summer schedules. It took us a summer or two to figure that out, but everybody would go ahead and get their annual in the month or the time that they wanted, and we would add it on. Well, I think one of the other key elements, and sorry to be so long-winded, was it took having people and things that people could relate to. So it was causes, it was giving back to people in need, bipolar awareness, cancer. It just environmental, like Jerry said, you know, it was preservation, 3 bays, surf rider. It had everything involved with it. And that was how we had the peak of probably 14 to 16 events in a year with 50 to 100 people per event for probably about 6 years, 8 years. And then it started to wean a little bit. So I'm very interested, intrigued, and humbled by all the work that you folks have all done to see if we can go ahead and bring it back and give us all jobs, longevity, and continue to do what we do with lifestyle. So it's been an interesting journey the last 14, 15 with SUP and the last 40 with surf and ski. It's amazing. It's an amazing journey.
I'll bet. And that's cool that you were in 2006. And you on the left of the screen, 12th annual. There are not very many races that have stand-up paddling that are that old. We have the Tahoe Nalu here that I believe is about the same time. I mean, those were probably a bunch of surfers. I don't know those guys. I hear about them all the time. Is that Waves? And
so that's Russ Scully, which
okay.
owns the Wind and Waves
Yeah.
up in Burlington, Vermont. He owns Villa Playa Maria down in Puerto Rico. That's where the Surfline Surf Cam is on.
Yeah.
He sponsors Will Scuden, Ben Gravy, Chuck Patterson, all amazing spokesmen and watermen.
But is the race up? Oh, it's in Burlington.
And in Burlington.
Vermont.
And for the first 10 years, we got involved and we gave back to the sailing center up in Burlington. And then he ended up buying this 14-acre parcel where he created something called the Burlington Surf Club. And it's all about giving back and just enjoying and celebrating being watermen, whether you're landlocked in Burlington, Vermont. There's some pretty avid watermen up there,
Yeah.
or you're on the coast like we are, you know, on Cape Cod in the Northeast. So I think together we can do it wherever we are to build the stoke and keep this industry going.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
But
How about you, Jace? You're also in the Northeast. I'm not sure. Well, you're on Cape Cod. That's right. Don't forget the unmute.
I'm on Cape Cod. Hey, can you hear me?
A little
Yeah,
bit quiet.
into it, volume.
Yeah. So I'm also on Cape Cod. I'm kind of the new guy. I just recently started my own company called Sustainable Aqua Life Training, or SALT, which is a paddleboard fitness company, and the Cape Cod SUP Club. And kind of looking at what everybody else has been doing, and with my background in rugby, playing rugby across the country, and the way they have their clubs set up, leagues, clubs, it's kind of where I want to go. My goal is deep health and focusing on, getting every single type of person on the water, whether they want to race or they want to, go, fishing or whatever. So with the club, we started getting out, and we had kids that were like, wanting to learn how to race. So we got them. Next year, we're starting a kids race league. We'll have an adult race league. And my goal is to get it into the whole Northeast and start it back up again. But my long-term goal is really just to get it into high schools and colleges, and really start, kind of the future of paddleboarding, just like, rowing. I want to, that's what our goal is right now. So we just got, just partnered up Got a piece of land. I'll be on 100 acres, and we'll be doing paddleboard retreats and yoga and races and, you know, exploring Cape Cod and the Northeast. So the future's looking really, really good. Pretty excited.
Great, exciting, and I love the passion. There's a lot of things on your list, but you sound like somebody who can go do those. I don't think Terry was able to join us.
It's getting done. It's crazy how fast it's.
So Danny Smith's I've known him for a while. He's my idea man, I call him, because he's always working on a bunch of different stuff. So a store owner, definitely a race director. It sounds like has had different leagues and stuff, but we're going to talk a little bit later about he and I have been talking to the ACA. He's worked with the AAU. He's working with One Class Racing. Just a lot of different things that we might work into if, you know, and expanding this, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But I want to let you introduce yourself, Danny. Sorry, I'm saying too much.
Yep. That was great. I don't even need to say anything. I'm Dan Smith. She did a great job. I started paddling back in 2010 or so. Opened up a shop in 2013. Started racing. Started hosting races right from the shop. We were right on the water. Back in 2013, we did summer series, winter series, starting in 2013. A lot of that, every single race that we ever had some sort of one design component at the time, and then now it's called One Class. And then I think one of my first real races was Carolina Cup, so that was kind of an eye-opening, super fun experience. But I did a lot of other kinds of racing, triathlon and stuff, and that's kind of where I felt like, you know, paddleboarding, once I started racing, 2 people in the water, it's a race and everybody's having fun. Yeah, and then we just did a pretty fun race not too long ago, 3 weeks or so ago, it was Pro Watercross. It's part of the jet ski tour, and I think that's something that we all need to look at. There's a company, if you look at the prowatercross.org, they want to do a series with us. If we can get the paddlers in there, they've already got stuff with CBS Sports. They're on TV. It can happen. I don't have much with that, but it was a lot of fun. Very tight racing. You know, you can see everything, and I think that's one of the things that our sport needs. But yeah. And then we hosted the first ever AAU Junior Olympics this past summer. It was supposed to be up in Vermont, and then it turns out Florida got it. And you know, we didn't have big numbers, but we didn't expect big numbers. But it was great, and the AAU loves us, and they want Stand Up to be involved in the AAU. I didn't know anything about the AAU prior to that, but it's good stuff.
It is, and there's some fun ideas that we're going to come back to. I do want to mention 2 other kinds of leagues that we're not going to focus on, but there are a lot of great local leagues. I threw up Paddle Race Tuesdays, Waves of Wellness. Jessica runs that down in Orlando, and then they go out to tacos. I've gotten to go to that one because of many trade shows in Orlando. Also have done Danny's race, and we used to have the Orange Bowl because they were built around trade shows. But the community league, you know, in place, I know that they are in existence all over, and that don't want to say that those aren't important. They are, and that's we'll talk a lot, and I know a lot of you feel strongly about community and the fun, and you know, what, as much as we love competition, how do we keep these going? And the other are virtual leagues. I think I actually virtually race more than I regular race, and I race like every chance I can because I kind of jumped on every possibility. And there was one out of Deep Cove in Canada right off the bat, and they had a spreadsheet, and they had a different race every week that you did on your own, and then you put in your time. And virtual paddle league is something like that too. So and then a lot of the races that couldn't happen did some kind of a virtual extension. So don't want to we can't cover everything, so won't be too focused on those. And another thing I want to just at least acknowledge, there are tours like the APP, which is a world tour. Some years it has been more US based. They have gone together with the WPA, and they have a USA APP qualifying tour, they call it. It didn't happen this year, but some of the bigger events lining up for points. WPA, for me, it was based out of Southern California. Our early series that doesn't happen anymore, that really was big, was the Hobie's Hennessy series here in Southern California. And it really was a big, powerful one that always had hundreds. And it was more in our area. I don't think it meant to be regional, but it definitely ended up being, although WPA championships did move around. And other series we've seen kind of come and go. So definitely something I want to talk about is burnout and how do we keep it going. And already Mark mentioned in the Northeast that there were some big tours. SUPAA, that was Chase Kosterlitz. They still have a website. It's still up. I'm not sure how much he's doing. Want to acknowledge that one just because they have a race director's training that he did internationally for a while there. Don't know if he's still doing it, but I think that's interesting, even though it's called the Athletes Association. It kind of covered a lot of things. And for me, WPA at the beginning, I was a founding member in 2010, and that's how we got our points. They had a US point total thing. There's still some points going on, but I have to say I love that as a racer. And I am a open age group racer, and we'll talk more about like building from the bottom, getting people paddling, getting them stoked, and then helping them find whatever that niche is, whether it's surfing or racing or foiling, at the top end, the more that kind of stuff, or if they just are, recreational paddlers. As Mark talked about, we want to keep building because it supports all of us and what we love, and we want to share what we love. So just wanted to quickly acknowledge those things. And then also I didn't invite any like big event specific race directors, but we have some big stuff that goes on. And some of them are really specialty events. I got to go to the Payette River Games that happened a couple of years, which was this amazing whitewater. Who knew, we would have something like that. Chattajack, the race that sells out in hours with 500 watercraft, but is 32 miles long. Kim's done it a bunch of times. Only done it once. Just about killed me. This year was I understand they were gonna have they were trying to kind of bring the Hawaii races together in July for a downwinder series to kind of make that a series. Connor Baxter was sort of talking about that. That didn't get to happen. M2O, another specialty race. And then I want to acknowledge that there are things like USA Surfing has had a qualifying race to go to the ISA. So that's a very specific one, but still US based teams. The ACA, just a couple years ago, that's a very old organization, and some of you are involved with it, like Jerry's heavily involved. I think he was volunteer of the year one year even. But they don't have a qualifier yet, but they are very interested in both groups in how to grow stand-up paddling. And I know you guys are probably aware of that Court of Arbitration case, and it was surfing that they gave the pursuit of the Olympics with SUP, but both groups say they still want to help us grow. So I just think those are things to keep in mind when we look at the big picture of the US. And I mentioned the APP events and that they have a US series. So how to pull that all together? Do we want to pull that all together? These are all interesting topics to me that I hope are interesting to you too. Let me get out of this share and bring everybody back in together. I just want to kind of float kind of personally how I feel that US SUP racing is especially challenging to organize. We are geographically a huge country with 50 states and places like Puerto Rico that are part that could be counted too. We don't have a culture of clubs the way some countries do. I interviewed some people in the UK, and they just are all a member of, a boathouse type group, and that all had a, event, and then they had a national event. It was not a big deal. You qualified for it at your club and you go in. Australia has a huge ocean club. Everybody seems to be a member of some type of a water organization, a paddle organization. We have some, but they're different in different places. Boathouses, Jerry, right? Like the inland river kind of thing. And we talked about that when we had our talk about like diversity in paddling. But I just don't see that. Plus, stand-up paddling in general is just, there's so many ways to enjoy it and so many ways to compete in it. So how do you limit that so it's manageable? It's great to want to bring it all together. APP does have SUP surfing, for instance, which is very different than racing and a different kind of, judging contest, but it's a contest. Whitewater is quite different. What the ICF and the ISA have to bring is quite different. But coming back to your series, you guys have had some conversations between series. A lot of you have talked to a lot of race directors and pulled together. You've made some decisions, which I think is amazing about, and I don't know how hard it was, because sometimes people get really stuck in what they want, or they may be in a place, how do you standardize or give guidelines when the race is in an area that doesn't have a short course and a long course, really naturally. But let's just go back to, like, how did you guys connect, and how within your series maybe, or with each other? Anybody want to start that one? Can't, no.
Of course, Doug disappears at exactly the right time, right? Because, from Midwest perspective, Doug built a lot of these relationships traveling around, and I know he met Jerry. I know he met Danny. I know he met Kim, and a lot of this kind of came about very kind of informally. Hey, we're thinking of this. What are you doing? And some of those things are kind of coming together in terms of the long course and the short course. And we talked to Jerry about being inclusive of seated paddlecraft, and included some of that this year. Our website from a rule structures perspective looks a lot like yours, Kim. And a lot of that stuff is coming together because it just naturally works. But I still think we do have like a ways to go yet in terms of aligning with each other, especially in terms of, how we're doing points. I think race structure and classes, that's kind of closer. But yeah, I think that we do have some opportunity to still kind of come together and align a little bit more. And that once we have that kind of alignment and groundswell, then that can really start to feed and build momentum for the AAU and ACA kinds of things, because, we're all talking, apples and oranges. So, I mean, I think it's been pretty organic just based on what's working in the environment right now to this point.
Yeah. I think maybe it was Southern Stoke that came up with a nice graphic, because there has been a lot of discussion around some really minute details. But before we get into those, Harrison, I appreciate you mentioning all those different ones. I want to also throw out, I mean, would you guys, or have you ever talked about having regional championships and a national championship? I mean, that's me looking at big picture, and I would love to see that every region has a series like you do, and that there's a way to, and maybe it's open, but you could maybe, if you qualify, it's a little bit different category in some way. Again, we want to be, how are you inclusive, but still, for those of us who have a competitive bent, I want to know, I'm almost 60. I want to know when I'm 60 where I am ranked in the US in my women's 60 plus category. Those of you who come from other sports like triathlon, Danny and I have talked about that a lot. We care about those kinds of things, but it's not that we don't care about the other stuff. So before we get into those specifics, I know, like Jerry, I know Doug, I looked at your websites. You almost all talk about community, fun, the important stuff. So Jerry, you want to kick us off? I know I promised I'd let you speak your piece about that.
I wanted to really hop on what you said, because that excited me. I come from a soccer background, so I played soccer all the way through college. And so it was dope to kind of you go through your season, and you go through your playoffs, then you go for the championship game. That's what I'm used to, is that type of, and having your ranking and seeing where you stack up as a player, on, Max Preps and all the other, websites and stuff. So I grew up as a digital native. So I was able to go see my stats, and I would love, that's been my dream, is to see, how USA Cycling has the cat series, cat 1, cat 2, etc. And you can go in there and see your ranking. It would be really dope. And they have it across disciplines. They have road, they have mountain bike, they have gravel and stuff like that. And it just would really be awesome if some way that us at these grassroots racing organizations could plug in to the ACA, since the ACA is our NGB. They had that merger. So since the ACA is the NGB, like we're grassroots, how can we plug into that to kind of feed that system? So then there's a diversity of athletes that's going at the international level and a whole like ecosystem. And then I want to say also too, Kristen, one thing we didn't bring up too is the legacy of the USCA, United States Canoe Association. There was a break off of the ACA because like ACA started to be focused mostly on education, and so the USCA is focused on like marathon style racing. So that was really popular, in like 60s, 70s, 80s or so. And they're still kicking around. And so anyways, but yeah, I would love to see a freaking championship. And me and Doug have talked about some cross-pollination stuff, but yeah. But yeah, as far as community, yeah, I think community is like, the backbone of like what I do. I am a community organizer. I am an environmental educator, first and foremost, above anything, above a race organizer. These racing is just a tool for me, to educate people and to help people get people moving. And I think that that's what we have to, think about, is because, and some people get offended when I say it, but our sport is really homogenous. There's a certain demographic of there's barriers to entry. There's a certain demographic of folks that race, socioeconomic, da da da. And so I feel like that in order to really grow it, we have to think about, how can we include everyone in it? And that's thinking about equipment. That's thinking about the length of our race events. That's also investing outside of the race day. Something that the pandemic has really helped me do is really buckle down on thinking about that. So my friend Amanda started this thing called Hump Day Paddle Club. And it was like, pull up, socially distance, we'll bring you a SUP, we'll bring you a boat, and we're going to paddle a distance and around different put-ins. And we'll teach you, we're all, I have ACA instructor cert and stuff. And I think like more investment outside the race day would make people more comfortable to race, because we're so focused on, okay, yeah, let's go to the race, get you a board, go to the race. But people, like, you got to develop people, like before, like I ever like hit like soccer in college, I like was like kicking a ball around, like the, in little league or whatever. So community development is important. Yeah.
Agreed. And along with that, the youth has been mentioned. Causes, there's a lot of things that feed into it, but that network of feeding into it is just what's so important. So whether you're connecting with groups that are doing that, like your friend with the Hump Day paddle, how do you then introduce them to the next step? But I just did want to mention that a lot of us were early adopters, and we have a little bit of a different personality. And I think sometimes we just went and did stuff regardless of what we had friends, and we tried it even if we didn't know. But we're on this new wave during the pandemic. There's huge growth, and there's people, a lot of them in my area, were getting inflatable boards, but they're super excited about what they're doing. They might have not taken a lesson yet, and they have their paddles backwards, but they might be our future racers next year. So how do we keep the stoke and keep that flow going, keep the growth, and not make the assumption that everybody's as independent as some of us, I think, were maybe at the beginning. And the travel, and Jerry mentioned barriers, and how do we help? So I think that's a great direction and topic. Any other thoughts?
When I started Midwest Paddle League, it was almost kind of personally based, because when I first got paddling, when I went to my first event, I raced and I finished, and then I was like, okay, now what? And everybody was in their little groups, and I was kind of on the outside, and maybe it was kind of in the heyday, so you weren't really inclusive as a new person. And so as I went to more events and I recognized people and introduced myself, and that's, I met some of the people, but that was a feeling that as I got into more paddling, I didn't ever want anyone else to have. And that's where, when we created Midwest Paddle League, we came up with the phrase community first, competition second, because our events, everybody has to travel. We talked about travel that, you're driving 3, 4, 5 hours, and maybe you got to go the night before. And that's where our events are almost becoming events for the weekend. It's not just You get up Saturday morning, you drive an hour, you race, you come home and mow the lawn. Now it's like the whole weekend. So now we're trying to build networks of, hey, you know, so-and-so, let's carpool. When we get there, let's get with all these other people and maybe we'll split a house so we can save cost. And so it just, the community, and that's something that I've learned over the years, just whether it be traveling out west, traveling down south, you know, Danny, you know, hooked me up for the race when I was down there last year. Terry has hooked me up out west. Aqua Adventures has always been good to me when I was out in California. And it was that no matter where I went, the community was the same. They were always welcoming. Like I remember being in the lineup for Hanu Hanu, and everyone's just chit-chatting back and forth. And it was just so cool. And I wanted to bring that back to the Midwest. And that's where 100% it is community first, competition second, because I think everyone will agree that these races are basically just a weekend family reunion, which is a party interrupted by a timed, rapidly moving social paddle, and then back to partying. So it's just where you tend to get a little more passionate about certain things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that description. A fast moving social paddle. I've never quite heard a race being called that. Yeah. But I think I don't think these things like are one or the other. Just a lot of these things can happen at the same event, and we can keep everyone happy. Because again, you know, I was expressing my competitive side, but I absolutely after the race want to have, you know, the food and the camaraderie and the friendship in the community. And that's, you know, the small races, that's all about, like, I get to go see friends who are a little bit distant away and, you know, have that half day. The destination events, I love it when they have extra. You need to have more than that race, you know, because we do want to be together and enjoy. And again, COVID aside, after all this, I think 2021 has potential to be an amazing year. I just want to say, because a lot of us who haven't been able to race are really, really excited to get back together with everyone.
Absolutely.
So I know some people are commenting on Facebook and I'll try to see if there's any questions, but if any of you notice.
I was gonna say, like, you know, we give a shout out to Southern Stoke, you know, piggybacking on what Doug said, like, you know, my first event was the Bluegrass SUP Derby in Kentucky at Shaker Village. So like the Southern Stokes platform helped me, you know, get into SUP, and it was really friendly because, you know, like someone had like a pair of like black box boards and they're like, yo, pull up, got a board for you. Cause I had like a boat boards 12.6 HD. And he's like, man, I can't have my bro chilling on that board. I got to get you like that fast whip. So I was like, okay, cool. And then it was really friendly. And I met so many amazing people that I have friendships with now, like Adrian Angel, Leslie Macklin, what's the dude, Perkins. So many people were there. And it was like those friendships have like, you know, grow. And then I was able to use that platform of the Bluegrass SUP Derby. I was like, we're doing something here. We brought people here. So like, let's grow that. And so like, that was, Southern Stoke was a piece of my like DNA of my work with sport, with the paddle sports racing, SUP racing.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, John.
So, hey, you know, kind of like what you said, Kristen, we are at a reset button right now after COVID, to be honest with you. We have an opportunity to, it's grown, the sport's grown, clearly. There's board manufacturers, shops, I'm sure Danny's seeing it, can't keep boards in stock. High Country, I'm sure, is feeling the same thing. We have definitely seen a growth in the sport of paddleboarding. I'm a huge believer, and you touched on it earlier about the local race leagues, because honestly, the best way to grow this, and we're talking racing obviously, is to start all over again at that local level, because it's so easy to have a friend that you run into at the beach or, you know, at a local shop and say, hey, you know, why don't you join us on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and jump on a board. I have a board you could use, you know, this sort of thing. And I'm bragging a little bit because where I'm from, you know, Blue Line has the Tuesday Night Race League, and they were one of the original race leagues, and they average about 60 people every Tuesday night. And it's, I mean, literally every Tuesday night. And it is totally 100% social. So Doug is on the money with that. Like, the main reason we all go is for after the race. So I really think the the importance of a local race series, and just and it's going to be dependent on shops and clubs and things of that nature. You kind of mentioned a lack of clubs in the United States for stand-up paddling. Well, really, these local race series are sort of almost like a club. So when we meet on a Tuesday night, let's say, for an example, we pretty much tell everybody, hey, there's a race in 2 weeks in Naples. Let's try to get as many of us to go and support this race. So I really think we all need to kind of look on a local level and then grow it from a local level to a regional level. Like in Florida, maybe it's South Florida, and then eventually all of Florida. The Panhandle's 10 hours away, so it's a tricky location. But and then, like you said, Florida Paddle League can connect with the Southern Stoke Series, and then we can have maybe a championship series at the end of the season or something to that effect. But I think you're right on the money. Everybody needs to have a similar point system. It's hard as far as like races, as far as distance, short course, long course, that sort of thing, to have a set course, because like you said, the Key West Classic, for an example, it's 12 miles around Key West, and that's what that race has always been. So, I don't know. I just really think that as a whole, to grow the sport of racing, it needs to start back on the community level again. Like we have a chance to hit the reset button.
I agree with John.
People into racing.
I agree with John, and I think that we really need to get back to basics. And we have the history. We saw how we grew it over the last decade. It was a bell curve, and we got more people involved. But it comes down to the community leading by example, showing people that they can do it. They can grow from 3 miles to 6 miles. They can go into the elite categories. And we need to, where the industry is hasn't seen numbers like it has since 2014 and 15, the dollars are there because the product's going to be flooding in the spring. And there's going to be, again, it was record number sales this year, but because of COVID, we couldn't go ahead and really get on that front line. I also agree with Jerry where we need to cross-pollinate, and we need to go ahead and make other stores or smaller events aware of others. So we need to go ahead and swap on our websites. We need to go ahead and create a traffic flow and a map that people can follow. And all they need to do is just get hooked, like all of us. And you're looking for the next thing, you're the need for speed, that next race, the next event. And all of a sudden they start raising the bar, and they start to go into bigger regional events, and then Eastern and West Coast events, and then national events, and they really see where they fall. But I think we're so on it because we have the history and we know how to rebuild it. What we need to do is get everybody involved. And I couldn't agree with every single person more than I ever have before. We need to do this together.
One of the things with the Florida Paddle League that we were really excited about, one of the most exciting, what I was most excited about, is we were doing short course rankings and long course rankings. This way you don't, because not everyone likes to do a 7-8 mile race. So there's a lot of people, including myself for a while. I just wanted to do the short race because I wanted to be part of the event and didn't really kill myself. So we were doing rankings for the short course and the long course. And we thought that was kind of important because then you have certain paddlers that sign up for all these events, but they only do the short course. Well, they can at least see now where they were stacking up against their competition. Because for the most part, the short race would have the same competitors week after week after week, and at least in Florida. And then the long course, you have some of your top paddlers that, a lot of the short course guys were like, dude, there's no way I'm catching these guys. Like these guys are at a whole nother level. So we thought it was important to rank the short course as well. So that was one thing we were really excited about. We only got to have 3 races this year before the COVID thing hit us, but Danny's race was one of them. And I know his attendance was up. All 3 races we had, they had record attendance. So it was heading in the right direction. And then of course with COVID, but I think that's important. The short course, maybe have a ranking system for short course.
The Southern
Yeah,
Stoke has always had that, you know, the short course and the long course. And when, I mean, that when we first started, that was, we always have always had the short course be just the biggest amount. I mean, High Country notoriously had, you know, 200 people in the short course one year. I mean, it was ridiculous. And we just, you know, we wanted to, it was all about getting those new people out. Most of those people hadn't even set foot on a board. And that was the thing that we were really trying to get going. And that they fell in love with. And that, I mean, I honestly have to say, probably those first few races in 2014, where we got so many new people hooked on the sport, they you know, and then it was kind of like, okay, you've been sitting around in that short course for a little too long, you've been milking that, you've been in first place in that short course. And then they go, well, would you, if you ran a marathon, you know, I don't run marathons, I'm a 5K person, always been a 5K person, do I really have to bump up to the elite long course? So there's stuff like that you know, you kind of get into with, you know, some people think it's the mentality. You kind of have to set a mentality for everybody that's racing, that okay, if it's short course that you're going to be running, that, or you know, paddling, then do the short course and stick with it. But yeah, it's important to get new people started, and somebody that's never started or never paddled before isn't going to jump into a typically, you know, 6 to 8 mile, you know, race. At least I've never.
Yeah, and I would agree that, I mean, we too, you know, have it divided by short and long course. And really, you have to grow the short course because that is what is going to feed your long course racers. But we also wanted to get away from the terminology, because I've often heard of like the, you know, the 3 mile race being a rec race versus the elite race. And those were terms I didn't want to be thrown around because they're just not community friendly. It's like, well, there's you, and then there's you, and it was a perception thing.
That's why we went away from that and said, okay, it's a long course and a short course. We're getting rid of that stinking elite name.
Yeah, because frankly, some people are better, you know, just in sprints versus that endurance type thing. But the other big change that we made, and I think most everyone here has done the same thing, is there was the, you know, that 14 class and there's a 12-6 class. And everybody wants to stay racing in the 12-6 because they could probably win an award there. And I get that totally. But what we did last 2 years ago is we took the 14 and the 12-6 and just said, look, it's 14 and under. I get, you know, some people physically can be faster on 12-6 versus 14. So just choose your weapon. But we wanted to make it easier on the race directors as well, because so many classes, so many awards, so many everything. And that way we kind of streamlined it a little bit. But then you also look at it from the standpoint that, well, before you would typically award first, second, third for your overall league in 14, and there was 12-6. Well, now you've only got 14 and under, so then you only have 3 awards when you used to have 6. That's why we made a top 5 in long course, short course, men's, women's, so on and so forth. That way we didn't necessarily lose those places. And my experience has been, if you get one brand new person to a race and you give an award, they're coming back. So frankly, the more awards you can give out, the more repeat offenders you will have.
Well, I think
the balance.
It's like, so like to the same thing for me, like in my series, we do short and long, and we actually standardize the distances, you know, amongst like, so this year we were breaking, I was super stoked. We had like different categories. I changed up, let me go to my website, but I changed up the names and stuff of the distances. And to Doug's point about the awards, it's like I did the same thing with 14 and under. It was a hard decision because everyone around the community was like, it was the big debate. Everyone's debating about it, but it was just like a logistical thing, an economic thing. Because I was like making all my awards. I was traveling about like 2-hour round trip to like Louisville to go to General Electric. They had like a whole like maker space, and so I was like using their laser printer, digital stuff, you know, CAD machine. And I was just like, man, I got tired of doing all that stuff. So I was like, if I can streamline my awards by cutting out, because I have like
Just
all these other classes.
Yep.
that helped. And there was some gripes at first, some people were, but then over time, it was like, it made sense. It made sense because we have a limited amount of SUP folks in our region anyway. So having everyone together just made sense. But yeah, this year we changed our race types to make it fun. So to take away, like, I'm a big proponent of like democratizing your language or making language more inclusive. And so like the whole elite and pro thing. So I try to make it fun. So I came up with dash, which is like 5 to 8 miles, distance 9 to 25 miles, dynamic, which is like whitewater events, and then we have youth, which is like 1 to 3 miles, and then ultra, which is like 25 plus miles. So then you get like pick like what you want to do. There's no like connotations to it. And so I was really excited to roll that all out, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, I think I think all these are great ideas, and we've been doing similar things as everybody else has. But I really think back to put us all together, we have to have a standard. I mean, that's what we have to have. If you look at any other legitimate sport, look at USAT triathlon, just as an example. They have, you have a sprint distance, Olympic distance, half marathon, half Ironman and Ironman distances. Just running 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons and marathons. These are all set distances. We can standardize our sport relatively easily. The models are out there all day long. Yeah, so
but Dan, who
provides the standards? We
yeah.
do. We all do. This is what we're doing. We're talking about setting the standards, and that's something that we are doing. We, along with the ACA and potentially the AAU, that's what needs to happen. If we all keep continuing to do what we're doing, we're just going to end up where we are. There's not going to be, and not that this is a terrible place, but if we really want to grow our sport as a unified sport, then we need to set the standards, and this is the group, or this is part of a group that could do that. And part of that, going from 14 and under, that's great. I know we were going to talk about it, but just I'm going to throw this in there. Having a one class or a one design race is really good for our sport. And whatever that is, whatever that board is right now we have a hard board. I think we're going to introduce an inflatable to that, because most manufacturers right now make a 12.6 board that would fit in that class. And what that will do is opens it up, but there's less intimidation for the new person coming into our sport. Then when they get into it, they'll grow. They're going to grow probably into the 14, maybe not. But having one class is very important to our sport, and it happens in most other things. Even the IROC series and NASCAR had it. Hobie class racing, laser class racing, but all these have set standards. There's no set, nothing is set in stone yet. The race we did in Naples was great. It was very similar to what we did with the Junior Olympics. A lot of buoy turns right in front of the crowd. The racers were involved with it. They loved it. The spectators could be involved with it. And probably more importantly, the bigger picture is something like that is great for television. It's also great for the sponsors. The sponsors everybody's seeing everything that the sponsors want them to see, all right there. Normally our races, the long distance races, even some semi-short distance, you say go, and then everybody's gone. And everybody all the spectators are just sitting around twiddling their thumbs or throwing frisbees, which is cool, until everybody gets back.
Such good topics. I love the word kind of guidelines instead of like standards. People seem to like that better, because there are some things that have to be able to flex, like Jerry talked about, kind of categories. But I mean, if you say short course is 5K or as close as you can get to it in a 10K, and maybe that's different for different people, that's really a starting point. What I see in looking at those of you who have series and have talked to each other, you guys have come a long way, I think, and are doing a lot of things similarly and not exactly the same. And I can't believe we're over an hour already, because we could probably talk for 3 hours about all of this.
But it's just like a rare opportunity to get like,
Yes. Well, I would.
a brain trust like this together.
Well, let's start something. And those of you listening too, one thing that we need, and I really wanted to talk about next, but was mentioned, we need you not to burn out. So how do we do that? How do we get more help? How do we get people to start this? How do we make community here within this? And how do we have eventually a US connected race series of races? Fantastic group right here. Again, if you're listening and you're willing, I think more volunteers are needed. Some people say, I mean, we're only 10 to 15 years old in stand-up paddle racing. We really are a young sport and still have lots to figure out, but such positive feelings, such great community. I think we have this new wave, as John was talking about again. This is a great time to bring people together, to get people into racing, to make it friendly, make it inclusive. But just a few more minutes if you guys have it. What can we do to help you guys not burn out? I know that like John Bosang wrote some articles about, those people who complain all the time. And I definitely have some friends who, whine about this or that, or, and I fully believe, we had part of the loss of race directors was they were losing money every time. They were getting flack from people. They weren't getting, enough. As great as our community is, everybody thinks they know. So I think one thing about guidelines and standards is it's a little more, hey, this is how we're doing it all over the place, and isn't so up for people to discuss that this should be changed and try to do your job.
One of the things that we did with the Southern Stoke was to put guidelines and rules for the race directors, so that, because we did early on, we did surveys of the racers and also race directors, and said, what do you want to see in a race? And one of the big things, it was strange, food. They wanted food. Don't give me just a banana and water. We want food. And then, other things were like, we don't want a piece of paper certificate saying that we won first place, second place, third place. We want a medal. They wanted something physical. So we listened to them, and we put all these guidelines together and said, and then it was kind of okay, race directors, if you can, show up, then you can be in the series. If you can't, then, and it was kind of, we had a lot of races that wanted to be in the series, but we also wanted a higher standard for the racers. That we wanted them they're taking hours to drive, sometimes spending 2 days just to go and race. And if they're going, you want everybody, you want them to be happy and have a good time. And so it was, kind of trying to put, some guidelines into place. And a lot of what we did when we first started was went along the lines WPA. And that was, back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, WPA was it. That was your national points right there. And, it just kind of disappeared. So that was top down. And now I think we're going, bottom up, grassroots up is, I think, what we're trying to do here.
Grassroots
instead of somebody dictating.
Grassroots has been huge. I want to say, Dan, I'd love to see standard. I drove all the way down from Cape Cod to the Key West Classic this, a few months ago. Stopped at Blue Line, saw what they had going on. John, I see what you guys have been doing, and I'm trying to recreate it up here. And one of the things I've been doing, we have a bunch of people that, a lot of these people that when they came out to paddleboard, it was because of COVID, and they were on their knees. And at the end of the season, we were learning about buoy turns. And next year we have a group of people who are going down to the Carolina Cup just to see how it is. I'll be racing in it and a few others, but we're going to get a house. We're going to hang out. We're looking at taking our Cape Cod SUP club and going down to like Richmond and going back out into different areas to bring our club there, and then they bring their club to us, and really start bringing it out. So I started the club June 1st. We're at almost 600 people, and everybody, most of them didn't have a board. So every shop on Cape Cod benefited from that because they all bought boards or paddles or gear. I mean, I had one guy that bought 3 boat boards just right off the bat, you know. Great, we are in Cape Cod, so it's kind of easy to do that. And you know, the Northeast, I did paddle fit certifications. More certifications would be amazing. And just watching the sport grow, I'm really excited for 2021. I think it's going to be really cool.
And we're excited to have new people like you in it with all that energy. And that's fantastic, all the stuff you said you're going to do. That really helps grow our community.
Burnout, like, you know, I got into this thing, you know, I was like 24 or so, and, you know, I'm getting to be an old man now. This is like, you know, 5 years or so into this thing, 5-6 years. And I'm getting, you know, I'm burning out. And I think, to be transparent, I think it's because it's a lot of hard work, you know. Like, I'm in a region, you know, and maybe, you know, Kim can speak to this, you know, like we have like strong paddle sports cultures here, but like funding is like, you know, it's like difficult, you know, for sponsorships and stuff like that. And so and especially in Kentucky, we're a really poor state, really, really poor. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, and so that's another factor. And then, like, I was going out of the way to try to make custom awards, you know, food, freaking raffle prizes, you know, tourism, and it's you know, I'm burning out a little bit. But what's giving me life is the focusing on, okay, like, this is like how I want to, like, you know, I think every race organizer, league organizer has to own like what they want to do, because like I realized, like, you know, at one point, like, you know, I'm not chasing to kind of be the biggest, baddest like league or event. That's not me. I'm looking at metrics for myself. Are we growing the sport? Are we getting youth involved? Are we getting folks of color involved? Are we reaching people from Appalachian to rural to micropolitan Kentucky? Those are my metrics, you know. And you know, and then are we getting that tourism and stuff? And that's what I'm solely focused on. And so, like, if either folks that come to my events or, like, you know, part of the community, they gel with that or they don't. And I had to like own that, because people were saying like, oh, we need to, Jerry, you should pay XYZ to come, you know, like, pay this ringer to come. And I'm like, no, this is about y'all. Like, I've looked at y'all grow like a papa, you know, as in this sport. So it's about you. And like, how can we cultivate that person that we see in the window at Planet Fitness on that, you know, elliptical? How can we get them say, hey, get off that elliptical, come on, join us? And so that's my focus, and that's what's giving me like energy. And I want to shout out Leslie Macklin. She, you know, I met her at that Bluegrass SUP Derby, and she's just been a really great inspiration to me of how long she's been in the sport, and her positive spirit and her guidance and her focus on like community. She's one of the people, and I think it's important for race organizers to latch on to those ambassadors and really activate them to like help you, you know, because like they're how the sport's going to grow. And like, those are the people that when new people come, they're going to be like, hey, what's up? Like, what are you doing? Where are you from? And she's one of those people. And I think we need more people like her, and to utilize those folks more in your infrastructure.
Yay, Leslie. She was online. I don't know if she still is, but if you are, I met her in Chicago at a race. So a lot of us know her. Yes, there's lots of awesome people. It is already 5:15, and some of you need to have dinner and some of you need to go to bed, depending where you live. I would love to, though, continue this. It doesn't always need to be a live conversation, but I think we have a great group right here. I would love to keep expanding it. Kim, you threw out surveys. Maybe that's a place to start. This is one, you know, I do these every Tuesday on different topics. I can't always follow with the group, but I really care about this one. So I would love to be a part of helping it happen. And I know you guys know how to use Zoom and everything, but, and I don't know what we call ourselves, but US SUP Racing. And others that are listening who are interested, because I do think you guys need help, not because you're not doing it well, but just because, again, don't burn yourselves out. Make sure that you are feeding yourselves and your own soul, and that's different things for different people. But want to thank you all for your time tonight and for all that you're doing. And we're all thinking positively about 2021, getting through the year that 2020 was. A strange year, lessons learned, right, in different ways. Thanks again. And thanks for those of you who are listening. We do have a Facebook group where we can post stuff. I'm going to put links to all your series, and y'all, let me know if some of you gave me, if you want any other social media listed or anything.
Is that a public group, Kristen? Is that a public group?
It's SUPConnect's group right now, but I'm going to be finishing with them, and I think they're letting me take over the group. That's why it's a very long name right now. It's SUPConnect Live and KT Outside discussions. But I've done 32 single interviews, and this is, I think, the 5th panel. They're all on YouTube, but that's a good place to be able to post pictures and keep people in touch. Let them know when your first races are and what's happening once we're again through all this.
Yeah, I know you're wrapping this up, so I'll be super quick. But that was one of my thoughts. Was I see SUP Chat, I think it's called, on Facebook,
and we had Maggie Adams on last time.
That's Maggie. Yep.
99% of it's about inflatables. Like everyone's like, what inflatable? Which is great, but I think we need a SUP race public group that can get as much traction as SUP Chat, where race organizers, shop owners, brand, anyone can plug away, do their thing, throw some love out there to whoever, and maybe that will get more people involved in the racing, performance racing, whatever you want to call it. Anyway,
it was mentioned that at some points we've had different, SUP Racer, even though he's international, was really doing a great listing at one point, but we don't have a good list like we should have, so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. Or if they are regional, that's okay that we're on the same day, but when we're trying to have something bigger, coordinating a list is a great place.
That's where I think the ACA comes into. Like USA Cycling has a whole list of race events. I think the ACA should.
Right, and we're working towards that, and that will have some overlap. Some will be different than what you're doing, but ACA is super open and interested to working with SUP and how to grow SUP, and they might have a big event that would be a little different maybe than some of them because of their history and what they do and how they do things, but they also have an incredible rich history, a lot of connections. They talk about a network of clubs, amazing things that can help us grow, and they're interested. So agreed, let's keep talking. Thank you all. One last thing.
Right, one of the last things I wanted to mention, we didn't talk about insurance very much. With the USA, so part of USA Rugby. So USA Rugby, the Olympics, they go all the way down, and you have different clubs. So when you sign up through that, it actually covers a portion of the insurance. So if anything were to happen, so if you're a member of that certain club, like I'm on the Cape Cod rugby team, if something were to happen, they have insurance as an organization, which is huge. And I know ACA has different insurance, and so it'd be interesting to see if we could put something together where it's just
ACA. Are you guys, some of you WPA still, or different places? Anyway, that is a whole another topic, but yes, we didn't get to some of those specific things like that I think could be really useful for everybody to talk about. All right. Happy Tuesday. Thank you all. Really appreciate you. And
thanks for the invite, Kristen.
We will stay in touch.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Katie.